The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on
This is
Sunday.
about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Welcome to the I want to say special edition of the Failure to Stop podcast, although the occasion that brings us to it is fresh, it's unfortunate, it's difficult, it's highly emotional, it's highly charged, but that is why in a great part this show began in the first place, which was when the Tetherball Network, the Drinking Rose Network, which that is kind of like interchangeable terms, it seems, brought us on. The whole concept was, hey, when crap hits the fan on the media, we need people who can help speak to that are informed. And so if this is your first time because of the title, because of whatever reason you stumbled into this episode, then I'm host number one, Mike the Cop, and this is host number two, Eric Tansey. Number one. Number one.
Why is Eric number two? Because I'm the little spoon.
Because I'm talking. I don't know. Anyway, so we normally do a true crime breakdown on Fridays, and we have 4 other shows throughout the rest of the week. One of those would normally be coming out today, called Last Call, but we decided to go on this journey today about the Uvalde thing, and I really wanted to wait even longer, but the amount of misinformation and misunderstanding and lack of understanding is so great. And you called me the other day, Eric, like in a little bit of disbelief at how many cops were just like devouring each other over this.
You can't, when I first saw this one, I don't ever believe the news, but you can't find 19 civilians that are so cowardly that they wouldn't run into a school. I don't think you could ever find 19 cops in a row. I mean, my neighborhood, I think 19 people in the neighborhood that I live in would run into that school. So when the media says that there were 19 coward cops, I automatically cannot believe that, because you can't find 19 civilians that would be too scared to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that stood out to me as I thought about this. So first, normally we play pretty fast and loose on our show. This one is going to be a little bit tighter. You'll notice there's no ads. We're not self-promoting. We're just letting you know who we are and what we're doing here. And I've got detailed notes. We're going to talk in detail from a principle standpoint, from a practical standpoint, and then we're going to get to the timeline and hopefully answer some of the questions that maybe you've had as you've watched this unfold. But the first order of business is to recognize a couple of things. First, I think it's really important to recognize the absolute evil that was embodied in this suspect, whom I will not name. I'll never give him or anyone that wants to be like him the satisfaction of saying his name. He's not worthy of that. But you got to recognize evil exists and it embodies itself in people. And that's just a reality of the world. And I don't think a lot of people are recognizing that or looking at the reality of there was a person who perpetrated this crime. You're hearing an awful lot about the cops. You're hearing an awful lot about gun control. You're hearing an awful lot about a lot of different things. What you're not hearing is a lot of people blaming the absolute embodiment of evil from someone that would, whether spur of the moment or planned for any motivation, take the lives of 21 human beings, 19 of them being children, right? I mean, that's evil. And we got to recognize that. We also have to recognize the unimaginable agony that these families and their friends and that community is enduring, right? Like, this is fresh. That's one of the reasons that we wish we could wait, but it's sort of like we've been tasked with a job to talk about these major things as they're unfolding so that we can help people with an understanding. So, but we want to recognize that they're going through something that most people cannot imagine. And I can relate to losing people that matter to you. But this is on a large scale, and has a wide ranging shockwave of impact. So I want to recognize that. Then we got to also be honest about a few things. One is that when emotions and grief are running high, people get restless, they get angry, and in the absence of being able to do anything to rectify that pain, it often leads to finger pointing, and they're trying to do that in some way to assuage the hurt, but it doesn't work, right? It won't work, but it's also a natural thing, and it's understandable. I completely understand that there would be people that hate cops right now, that criticize them because they run emotions. I had some of my very best friends in life posting on social media that these cops were all cowards and need to turn their badges in. They're disgraced. They need to be charged, all this other stuff. And it's natural. And I actually understand it, because you don't want the cops to get something like this wrong, and you want to do something, and casting blame is one of those things. Another thing to recognize is that the media doesn't care 1 ounce about this loss of life, nor what information is spread. The only thing the collective they of the media is driven by is clicks. That's it. If it bleeds, it leads. And it doesn't matter if something needs to be walked back later, because they can do it quietly in some obscure corner of the internet or their paper, if they ever do at all. My experience with the news is them getting it wrong in every instance. And Eric, you can chime in on this too. Every instance of a case that I was ever involved with, something was not right in the news story, whether it was aired on Channel 4 Detroit or whether it was in a newspaper. Do you share that experience with the media?
I don't even think I need to share those experiences. The Breonna Taylor case was a nationwide example of how wrong the media got it. It's really unfathomable how wrong they got the Breonna Taylor case. And then we all kind of allowed that to happen. Matter of fact, just had a discussion the other night where somebody actually brought up the Breonna Taylor case, and they still believe that she was killed in her bed while she was asleep on a no-knock warrant at the wrong house. And we know that none of those things are true. Not one single part of that is accurate. So we also saw with Hands Up, Don't Shoot. That was a whole thing that didn't exist either.
We had congressmen raising their hands up.
And the funny thing is that we've seen these lies, and we see the people that support the police time and time again. And we've all heard that the media, reasonable people on the right and the left can all say that the media is divisive, and the mainstream media does things to polarize these events to make us all hate each other more. But when something like this happens, all of a sudden everybody is taking, even the networks that preach about mainstream media and how wrong they are all following and regurgitating the same exact information as the mainstream media. Mm-hmm. And so this was kind of like, for me, once this all came out, and I knew I was going to wait, because I knew, I've said it on this show 1,000 times. You go back and watch all of our episodes, that anytime the media comes at you with trying to hit you in the feels, it's false. It's wrong. Yeah. Because if it was true, they wouldn't need to invoke those emotions from you. So I knew from the beginning that there had to be more to this story. I was just going to wait for it to come out. But it was sad watching so many people just swallow wholeheartedly what the media was telling them, knowing that we just went through with the whole Breonna Taylor case, knowing that the media is going to blatantly lie to you, and you're just going to be okay with it. So
Yeah, it was crazy seeing people who are becoming what they hate. It's that hypocrisy of you spend your time on the internet on your influencer account talking about how distrusting you are of the media, and then all of a sudden when something major like this happens and it seems like the tide of your followers is going anti-cop, you just hop on that surfboard and ride that wave.
It kind of it's an indicator that the media has won. This is one of those turning points for me where the media, it's worked. They've told enough lies. They've done enough time that now we're all just starting to believe it. It's okay. I saw a lot of influencers that got on this bandwagon very early. And when it happened, you and I talked a lot about it. And we said, if we want to be real journalists, if we want to practice what we really preach, now is not the time to get on this boat. Let's wait. Let's wait for the facts to come out. Let's wait until we talk to people who are on the ground and let's see what really happened. And then let's paint a real picture, the whole picture, because so many times, if you just catch that small little glimpse of the window of what the media is showing you or what the one piece of body camera footage, you miss that whole giant perspective. And so that's what we were always about. We didn't come out with anything, but watching those other influencers that you and I talked to on the phone, that we've chatted with in person, to watch them come out and regurgitate exactly what the media is saying was very disheartening, and shows kind of who they really are, that they're not real. That this is really for them. This is for the money.
Right. We are live on YouTube, and there's a comment from a James Kelly. Stop blaming the media for everything. You're deflecting blame here. James, we're not going to spend a ton of time engaging the comments because they're going to get stupid. I can guarantee that. I just say stick around and listen if you want. If you've already made up your mind, if you're in the comment section, or you've seen this as you scroll your phone on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you saw it, and you've already made up your mind and you're not going to change it, well, then just your hour of life will be better spent going somewhere else and doing something different. Go take your family for ice cream or something, because
but
if your mind is already made up, then it's made up.
I challenge you to stick around and hear this perspective, because had the Breonna Taylor case not come out and the people finally and the truth not come out, and that the jury, very quickly, came out with that the officer was not guilty, trying to convince a jury like that quickly in Louisville, is because of there's so many facts of that case that the media were wrong. And I challenge you, because I think once you get through here today, you're going to realize that these are key details that the media leaves out that paint a completely different picture. And I'm not going to say right now that the cops were 100% right, or that they were 100% wrong. But the thing is that there are key facts in this case that the media just isn't releasing that paint a completely different picture of this incident. And if you want to know, if you want to be smart, if you want to be wise, if you want to have real debate and make real change, then you should know the entire story and not leave out the critical points, which the media has done, because they want us to be divisive. They want us to argue with you in the chats. And all we're going to do here today is give those really key points, those really key moments that paint a very different picture. And then you can then look at that picture and its totality and kind of determine what you think about it.
Yeah. Moving on through things that we're laying the groundwork on the things that we need to recognize before we dive into the conversation. Okay. So the next thing up on my list is politicians will always leverage tragedy like this to further a pathetic self-serving agenda. And politicians extend to the rank of police leadership, such as the Texas DPS. We are willing to call cops bad when they're bad. When the head of the largest law enforcement agency in the state of Texas, in terms of like scope, like the Texas Department of Public Safety, comes on and starts making investigative statements that they did not know to be true, they did not have confirmed, you should be worried. I was worried, because I'm like, that's not even an established fact. Why is he saying it? Why would a law enforcement officer tasked with an investigation be saying things that are not known to be true? That's irresponsible. And one thing that came out of that too, of his press conference, is that everyone glossed over, or a lot of people glossed over, is the benefit of hindsight. That's one thing that was mentioned in that press conference. But the Texas DPS has themselves walked statements back. Did you hear about those statements getting walked back? Probably not. Not unless you are looking in those obscure corners where I said the media will put their walkbacks, because the damage is already done. Politicians are going to take this tragedy. They also don't care about your kids. Listen to me very clearly. If the politicians cared as much about your kids as themselves, they would put as much energy, effort, budget, and focus on protecting them in their facilities that are government facilities as they do to protecting themselves.
You don't feel like you're walking into a prison when you walk into the White House. And a lot of people say, I don't want my kid going to school thinking that he's in a prison. If you've ever been to the White House and you've been on those tours, you don't feel like you're in a prison, but you're in one of the most secure and safely guarded areas in the country.
Yes.
And I don't think that it's unreasonable. We spend millions of dollars protecting schools from fires with fireproof carpet, fireproof desk, fireproof paint. Mm-hmm. Ceilings are fireproof. And we haven't had a child die in a school fire since like the late 1800s or early 1900s. But we only allow one school resource officer that the town pays for, not the school. So if we put as much energy as protecting people from outsiders as we do from fires, it would tell a different story. And I just don't like the argument of, I don't want to send my kid to school in a prison. I don't think you need to have a prison-like environment to secure a school.
No, you don't. And we can learn a lot from places like Israel. There are other examples of places that are secure in public education. I'm not a huge proponent of public education, but that's a topic for a different day. But I will say this, objectively speaking, if politicians cared that much about your kids as they did themselves, then they would be putting the energy into that. But they blame the blame game begins again. And I understand that blame gets spread around in events where emotions are high, grief is high, people are hurting, and they need something to try to assuage that pain. I understand it. Another thing that we need to recognize is that mass casualty events like this normally take years to dissect and fully understand. Yet our world wants answers yesterday, and couch sloths that watch too much NCIS and CSI Miami think that they've got it all figured out. They think, oh, I know what's going on. I saw Bad Boys 2. So I know what should have went down here. And that there's a lot of that going around, but you got to understand, we will not fully have all of the details mapped out. There were thousands of people present. You have no concept. Most of you have no concept of what it takes to conduct an investigation on that magnitude with the death of 21 people involved. You have no concept of a mass casualty response, nor what it takes to actually get the details out. We're trying our best because of how terribly the information has been communicated here. We're trying our best to step in and just call for some level of reasonableness and patience and common sense, because these things take time to unfold. I've been involved in mass casualty events in terms of the response to these things, and they take a while to get full detailed reports. And I misspoke, not mass casualty, critical incident events. So understand that. Another thing is that this perception isn't reality. So stop chasing it. I think police departments chasing optics is really harming the profession. Because
can't say it again for the people in the back, man.
The
reason that you are a police officer is to fight that one thing, which is perception versus reality. That's why we have the justice system. Because if we just went on perception as reality, we'd be hanging witches from nooses still to this day. But we don't. We have a justice system that works out those finer details. If I go to your house and your wife's got a knife in her chest and you've got blood on your hands, I don't get to just arrest you for murder, because the perception is that you murdered her because you got blood on your hands. She's got a knife in her chest. But the reality is you're trying to give her CPR. But that's what we've always prided ourselves on, is that we do the investigations, that we show up and we try to get the entire story, not your story, not her story, the entire story. But now all of a sudden in the last 10 years, we want to come out with a story as fast as we can. And it's whatever story makes the most sense at that time. And that's just not how life works. It's a very dangerous world to live in. Very dangerous world, because then you're blaming people for things that they absolutely didn't do. The perception is you're cheating on your wife. The reality is you're planning a surprise birthday party for her.
Yeah. There's so many things and seeing so many cops devour other cops this fast has been nuts. It's been disheartening, but hopefully we see an improvement in the right direction on this. We're talking about this for a couple of reasons right now. I wish we could wait. I wish we could wait a year to talk about this. The cases we normally break down are either like they're so clear cut and simple that the investigation only took 2 or 3 months and we can talk about it. And then there's other things that, we've talked about murders from 10 years ago, like it takes a while for the criminal justice system to work through all the court stuff, all the evidence to come out, and then to be able to talk about it with a level of intelligence and reasonableness and hindsight and what we can learn for moving forward. But we want to counteract a lot of the false assertions. There has been so many statements that have come out in the media, so many misperceptions, and we just want to correct them. I want to be clear that we are not giving some type of final definitive statement on this, but we're calling our listeners, our viewers, our friends, anybody that stumbles into this, we're calling them to pause long enough to push themselves away for a second into a more objective space and to take our experience and help people understand why that's important. Another thing that I think a reason that I'm doing this on a personal level, I won't speak for you, Tansey, is I want to actually encourage cops in this, which is a dangerous thing to do apparently in this situation, because cops are getting called cowards. This is not just happening in the ground zero of this, the epicenter of this, but cops everywhere are getting dirty looks. They're getting ridiculed. This is having a far greater impact. And I want cops to know that are out there doing their jobs and doing them right, doing them well, that I want you to be encouraged. I want you to know we support you. To every single good cop out there doing their job day in and day out, which is 99.9% of you, then I want you to be encouraged. I want you to know that we support you. And I know it's tough, but you got to drown out the noise and get to work, right? Like you got to just ignore that. Do you have anything to add on that side?
No, not worth saying right now.
All right. To get ready for today, full transparency, I had three key conversations. 2 of those conversations were with people who knew 2 different people from 2 different agencies who were inside that hallway. So there's that. And my third one was with someone who has helped provide mutual aid while the local police there are taking time off. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but a police officer actually lost his child and wife in this incident. So for all of you who said, "Oh, the cops were just looking out for their own," that is a wholesale misinformation. Okay.
Could you imagine if they did this with Black Hawk Down? Could you imagine if they called every time that the Cav moved back to the base to drop off their wounded and to get better ammo, to get more grenades, that they called it a retreat, that they called them cowards, that every time they tried to get those guys out of the helicopter and they didn't have the correct saws, that they called them cowards and that they called them fools and unprepared and wannabes because because that experience had never happened. That something like that hasn't happened. And I think when you look at Uvalde, there's a lot of aspects to this case. There's a lot of things that happen that nobody had ever accounted for before. Actually, it's not the first time something like this has happened in Texas. And you know what they did? They rammed a robot full of C4 and blew the dude to pieces. The good news about that story was that guy was in a parking garage, not in a school. So there's always going to be things. There's always going to be chaos. There's always going to be the fog of war that is hard to see through.
Yeah.
And imagine if we called those guys and Black Hawk Down cowards for making those decisions. And I feel the same way, knowing what I know now about Uvalde. I feel the same way. Those guys didn't retreat, and you're going to find all that out now. Those guys did the best that they could, and his wife and daughter were dead inside that school. And again, 19 cowards, dude. You can't find 19 cowards in America, especially not in Texas. Especially not in Texas. I don't care if you're left or right, gay, straight, bi, trans, confused, whatever. When fucking people are dying, people stand up, dude. Like 9/11, everybody was trying to be a hero. So the fact that you had 19 officers who have sworn an oath to say that there were 19 cowards, 19 dum-dums, it's a bold statement.
Yeah. Another person that I talked to, like I said, had responded for mutual aid. And so I got an account from him from firsthand accounts of people who responded. So I try to do my due diligence. I know and have talked to people who have responded to other large-scale incidents, mass shootings, and I also spoke to people who are, I would call them specialists in their field of breaching. Not many people know my full history. Part of that involves being a public safety officer here in Michigan, which means you do both police and fire. So I went through the fire academy. We did a whole class on breaching. So I have a rudimentary understanding of it. I'm not trained in advanced special weapons and tactics as far as that goes, but I do have a basic understanding of things that we'll get into. So the news breaks out. And what stood out to me is what, Eric, you've already said it a couple times, which I'm like, all right. So if this is true, what the media is saying, then every single cop that responded that they're calling a coward, like, is there a one coward? Oh, heck yeah. Can you find a lone coward that's a cop? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we
saw it in combat. Saw it in combat.
I've
saw
seen
it in Afghanistan. We had one dude on the team freeze up, scared to death.
Yep.
We didn't even chastise him for it though. And we found something else for him to do. But we knew in that moment that they was scared. But you know what? The other five of us doing work. But five out of the six, five out of the six were ready to do work. So I think you are going to have that one dude that's always going to be scared. Just going to happen.
Yeah. And I have no problem. Listen, when it's a spade is a spade, right? We're no strangers, even on this show, of calling out corrupt, crooked cops. Like, I have no problem calling out the Parkland cop that literally didn't do his job at a school shooting. I have no problem saying, yep, there's your coward. But the thing is that you don't have 19 of them. And you got to understand this too. This isn't just one police department. You might be able to convince me that a small podunk town, now Uvalde is like 16,000 people in the town. You might be able to convince me that a small department of 6 people are all just a bunch of sloths and not really good at their job. I don't know these guys, and I'm not even saying that about that department. I'm just saying I might be persuadable that
like
there
Andy
are
Griffith, if this was to happen in Avery County during the Andy Griffith show.
Yeah, like
Andy Griffith and his boys would have a hard time putting that warrior face on and getting to work.
Exactly. So maybe I'm persuadable there, but this wasn't one department. Here's the ones that I know were there for sure: the Uvalde Consolidated School District Police, Uvalde Police, Uvalde County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Department, State Police, game wardens, U.S. Marshals, Border Patrol, and other local agencies, like other surrounding towns that made their way over there. That's at least 8 agencies. So you don't have, even if you could convince me that the consolidated, Uvalde School District cops, that department was completely useless, even if we went to that extreme, you got to understand the common sense approach that made Eric and I take pause. And that is, you're telling me that 8 different agencies, while kids are getting shot, all at the same time and in the same exact way, all instantly became cowards. Is that more likely than maybe there being something more to the story that we don't know or don't understand? And that was my position. Like, hold on a second, guys. I mean, within 24 hours, these cops were being labeled as cowards. And I'm like, I mean, maybe I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to say that I know what happened, because I don't yet. I wasn't there, but hold on, guys. What is the likelihood that 8+ agencies all responding to this worst nightmare of any parent, any teacher, any cop, that kids are getting killed, are all at the same time and in the same ways being cowards? Or maybe, just maybe, there's some misinformation out there and people are jumping conclusions too fast. Maybe. So, is it possible that this situation is exactly what all of the current cop haters labeling them cowards? Is it possible that it is exactly in their minds what happened?
They've been trying to push all cops are bad. ACAB has been the thing. And so now all these people that were fighting it are now all of a sudden saying, yeah, all cops are bad. So the media has won, in my opinion. The media has won. You're all believing it. You all look at it. Every single person I know, not one person, as much as we have preached on this show, even our own fans have called and have already sided with the media off of the bat, not even questioning that there could be another side of the story. And that is such a dangerous place to be in this day and time, in this country, the way the social media works, the way that misinformation works, the fact that you are just going to wholeheartedly take, people have been fighting the mask mandates, saying that they're not sure what's true and what's not, saying that they don't understand what's going on with the voting, whether it was rigged or not rigged. People have been questioning lots of things, but it seems like in this instance, the whole entire country decided to not question anything. And everything that they saw, which then makes me say, what can't the media do now that we won't just believe? What else can the media show us that we'll just take wholeheartedly and consume it all as reality?
It's a sad state of affairs, to be sure. What my early predictions and all over social media, and hey, man, I am not, neither one of us are saying you're going to get down to the last detail what happened there, or that there's no criticism to come from this. Remember Columbine, right? That changed the game. The people that responded to Columbine weren't cowards. They just did the wrong thing. And we learn that whole situation changed the response to active shooters, especially at schools. So we learn. It doesn't mean that things were done perfectly, but it doesn't mean that there was a cowardly action, or it doesn't mean that the motivation was misplaced by these first responders. That's where you're losing me with the narrative. What I predicted would come out of this, if we'd be patient enough, is first, we're going to see that it was probably a terribly organized communication debacle. Why? Because those police departments and multiple agencies were not set up, even though the school district and Uvalde officers had just did active shooter training in the high school in March. So it wasn't necessarily a training issue. They just had training on it. But what you don't have is you don't have Border Patrol and U.S. Marshal Service and the county and the school district and the city and the neighboring cities all doing a training together, all saying, how would we communicate in a situation like that? What do we do when 18 patrol cars from other places come here and we need to move one to get ambulances in to deal with triaging victims, and we don't have the key to that? See, at my department, one key got you all cars, right? Like you had a master key. If you needed to move somebody's patrol car, you just got in and did it, right? Like you could mix and match. Not everyone's like that. So if you haven't trained for that in a town where you might feel that it could never happen to us, then there's going to be a massive gap in communication. If your dispatchers from different places, let's say that the school district got a phone call and they've got a dispatcher, then there's a dispatcher from this neighboring jurisdiction that's not on the same channel. They have to switch. And you've got federal agencies responding. Trying to communicate is going to be a nightmare, let alone the chaos and complexity. I simply cannot overemphasize this. When you respond to a situation like that, the chaos and complexity of it is not graspable by you if you do not have this experience. And I really wish that you would pretend that you didn't understand it. I mean, that's just a reality. I was fortunate that I never had to respond to an actual active school shooter. I was the first in the building on one incident where a student, the report was that there was an active shooter, that there was a person that fired a gunshot in a middle school. I was right around the corner. I was the first one in. What are you trained to do? Go to the sound of gunfire. There was none. Ultimately, I found a young middle schooler deceased from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So that was stressful enough. And that was one incident that was already done when I got there, let alone something
stepping
that was
over bodies.
so chaotic. This was the last day of school, by the way. Lots of parents there, lots of extra buzz, lots of people, lots of activity. This scene was insane. So I think you have to understand that one thing that would emerge from this is a greater need to train for better communication in mass casualty events. Another one is a realization for more significant equipment and training at a local level in the middle of nowhere. We're going to find as we walk through the timeline that what this becomes is an issue of equipment and training, not an issue of morality, not an issue of courage, not an issue of cowardice, but an issue of training and an issue of leadership. Okay. But at the heart of it is going to be some communication problems. Okay. And we'll talk about it. The procedural response for emergence of new lessons learned. This situation will be analyzed and it will change policing. It will change response to events like this. Okay.
I don't think for one, I hate to interrupt, but it was a great question by Deborah. Why aren't schools held accountable for not having proper locks and cameras? Deborah, the reason why they aren't held accountable is because there are folks, frankly, just like you. I don't know you, but I'll just use you as an example. So many people say, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to sit in line? Why do I have to sign my child out? That doesn't make any sense. Can we only enter this way to pick our children up? Why can't they just have them walk out there? Why should my kid have to go in the front door when I can easily get them to the back door a lot easier and beat all the traffic? Why are we spending money on video cameras and not iPads for these students? That's the reason why. Because when you spend more money or more time and make it more inconvenient, then everybody whines and bitches about it. I said, well, there's nothing that ever happens here. This is Uvalde, Texas. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Somebody going to come and shoot up the school? Really? Really? We don't need 3 officers there. Nothing's ever happened at this school. We should be putting that money into more iPads. That's why, Deborah, that is why you can't hold the school accountable for something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you gotta ask yourself what kind of world you want to live in, but you got to recognize the one that we're in which evil can rear its head where you're at. That happens. So what I want to do is I want to jump into the timeline. And as we go through the timeline, we're going to be able to correct some of the misinformation that's out there or misperceptions. You know, it's like the telephone game on social media out there. Mainstream media picked it up and says something, in somebody's ear who says something, who says something, who says something, who posts something, who posts something. And then all of a sudden people think one thing happened and it didn't. Okay. So I'm going to walk through the timeline and we'll talk about it. Sometime after 11 a.m., the suspect shoots his grandmother in the face. Okay. This is according to Texas Public Safety.
How many officers do you think would get dispatched to that? We'll talk about this as we do like a breakdown, how we normally do.
All of them.
Right. Right. I don't know how many cops Uvalde has, but I guess it's probably less than 4. Right. 2 or 3 that were working. That's how many they had.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if they had 2 or 3
I'd say there's not more than 10. So if you've got a shooting right off of the bat, you're probably going to send no less than 4 cops to a shooting. Shit, if it's Raleigh, you're going to send a lot more. Why? Because you have to set up a perimeter. Somebody's got to manage who's going into the scene, who's leaving the scene. You got to have somebody to stand over the evidence, the gun, the casings. You're going to have 3 officers doing first aid. You're going to have another officer. You would like to have another officer waiting for the ambulance to guide them into the right house so they can just drive right there. They're not having to look at what address they're going to. The more cops you have, the more work you can do. Shit, in Raleigh, we'd like to have 15 cops. 15 cops if you could, because there is a job for all of them. Somebody's got to run crime scene tape. Somebody's got to be the recorder and write down the times. Who was there? Who was not? You'd like to have 2 or 3 officers to go ahead and start canvassing to try to see what happened. So if this department has less than 10 cops, pretty much all of your cops are off of the street going to this one shooting. So I'm going to go ahead and guess here. I'm going to go ahead and speculate that Uvalde doesn't get a lot of shootings.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that, like, we would have had not total working, because we would have had the DB, we would have had other units out there. But as far as patrol units, I was in a town of like 40,000, but we were busy and we had about 6 on the road, right? Plus people inside and out and other special teams and stuff. So we could have, and we had neighboring jurisdictions. We could have had we would have had every man running to that call, right? On a gunfire. So
so everybody is going to a shooting right now to work on a shooting in Uvalde, Texas on this day and time. You've got more than half of your force, if not all of your force in Uvalde, heading to a woman who's been shot in the face. They don't know anything else. They don't know anything about a school. They don't know anything about a 17-year-old. They don't know what kind of gun it is. They don't know anything else except that they are all going to deal with a woman who has been shot in the face. And they're going to have to deal with that respectfully. Whether that shooter is at the house still, whether he's in the wood line, or whether he's left, they don't know. They'll have to figure all that when they get there. But in their brains, right now, everybody is going to a house where an older woman has been shot in the face.
Correct. So she runs out. She's covered in blood, tells the neighbor, I've been shot. And the neighbor's wife calls 911, right? Everybody's coming. 11:27 a.m. Video shows a teacher who has not been named as of 9 this morning. The last time I looked at updated information, I did not see the teacher's name released. They prop open an exterior door to the school. 11:27 in the morning, a teacher props the door open. So let's dispel the myth, the rumor, the misinformation that this shooter was just able to just walk. This school was just unsecured. That's not true. It was, but not normally, right? Like the doors were supposed to be locked. That's the way it's supposed to be. A teacher propped open the door and went outside. Okay.
Which is not unreasonable. We've all done that. We've all been at work. Door's supposed to be secure, but you know what? I got to go out to my car and get that protractor or my favorite pen ran out of ink. And I'm not using one of these other pens to grade papers with because I don't want to get carpal tunnel. I'm going to go out of my car and get my right pen. We've all done it. We've done it at the police fucking department. I don't really want to, I don't really want to go back to the locker room to grab my keys. I'm just going to prop this door, run out my car and come back.
Exactly.
Not a big deal. People do it all day long, every day.
Not trying to shift blame from shooter to teacher. I'm not trying to do that. I understand, like I said at the very beginning, the anger, you want to blame somebody. You need a scapegoat. Oh, that teacher needs to be charged with 21 counts of manslaughter.
Right. And some people are saying that breaking points dispel the mirror that the door was left propped open. The point was that she opened the door and went out of the door and then it didn't secure it on the way back.
It was not secured when it,
and that's
when it
again, not
back.
blaming this. I'm not putting the blame on her. It's not her fault. I don't think she should be named. I don't think she should even be shamed for what she did, because every single person on the planet Earth has done it, especially in the town of Uvalde, Texas, which somebody here in the comments said has about anywhere between 4 and 5 officers at work time. I don't know, but that's what somebody in the comments said. But I would guess that that's pretty reasonable. I guess less than 10. So 4 and 5 sits right there with what my guess is. But we're not blaming her. We're just giving you the timeline of events.
Yeah.
The door
I want to dispel the
unsecure.
myth that he just showed up to the school and was just able to walk in the front door. That didn't happen. Right. That would have been locked. But this door happened to be open. And it happened to be open because a teacher had propped it open, and it didn't whether the teacher didn't secure it or whether the automatic locking mechanism didn't secure when it closed. This is a situation where the school is normally closed, normally locked, but it was not at that door. It created an opening. That's what we know. Okay. 11:28, the suspect crashes his pickup into a drainage ditch behind the school. 2 men at a nearby funeral home. My understanding is it's like either kitty corner or across the street kind of a situation. Hear the crash and they run out to see what happened. By the way, this timeline is published on the Associated Press website. It's all I got right now. And all of the conversations that I said I had, I reviewed this general timeline, and it holds up from people who claim to have been there. So just letting you know. They see the suspect jump out of so these 2 guys are by the funeral home. They go they look over, they see a car crash in a ditch. Let's go make sure they're okay. 2 people start going toward the truck. They see the shooter emerge with a gun, backpack, and the shooter immediately engages these 2 men and starts firing at them. They flip and they beat feet back toward the funeral home, and they are not shot. But that was his first attempt. So
now, just to paint a picture here, you've got a bunch of cops who are going to a shooting where one's been shot in the face. And now dispatch in some form or another is going to say there's been a wreck and we're getting calls of shots fired over here. Correct. Not a school shooter, not an active shooter. We got a shooter. So this could be, I shot grandma. They don't know that this was the kid that shot grandma. All they know, and they don't even know it's grandma. So a woman's been shot. This could be, in their brains, they're probably thinking, okay, maybe boyfriend shot girlfriend in the face. And now he's going after, the other boyfriend. Type deal. They're not thinking, oh, active shooter. No. And again, if they've got, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and say they got 10 cops. Doubt they had 10 cops in that fucking town. But you got 5 going to work a homicide, and now you're taking 5, and they could be anywhere in that county. It's not like they're all together either. Now you got dispatch trying to get 5 more to go over to this funeral home, and they're going to get to the funeral home, and it's going to take them a minute to find the guys, because they're going to be hiding. They're not going to just be standing out there going, hey, police, come talk to me. Come chat with me. No, they're probably going to be hidden. Probably going to have to knock on 1 door, maybe not even 1 door, maybe 2 doors, maybe 3 doors before somebody's going to answer that door. And you're not just going to get out of your car and casually walk up there because there's a shooter. So you're going to drive around real quick and try to see if you can even see the shooter. Then you see the wrecked car and you're going to look inside that wrecked car. All this takes time. You're not just running around like a chicken with your head cut off. You're trying to manipulate this situation tactfully, hastily, and make good decisions so that you don't get hurt. So then they're going to find these gentlemen who are then you have to separate them to figure out what's going on. Hey, who is this guy? Why was he shooting at you? Oh, I don't know. Well, what kind of gun did he have? Well, it was a black one. And meanwhile, homeboy's over here doing the other one. Then we got to come together and put the stories together to make sure that we got this whole thing right. Make sure one of them's not the shooter, because we've seen that happen before.
Yep.
I've driven a man around who had just shot somebody in the head to find a guy that he said shot the guy in the head. And he had a gun in my car the whole time, and he was the shooter. So the timeline is not just, and I heard this timeline on the news, and they were like, it does not take 7 minutes to respond to this. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. By the time you drive there, let's give that 2 or 3 minutes. Then let's give 30 or 45 seconds to check that car. Let's give it another 30, 40 seconds to drive around the building to make sure you're not going to get ambushed. And then let's give it another 30, 45 seconds to it. So right now you're at 6 minutes. So that 7-minute time frame is not very far off at all for what's reasonable to try to manipulate that situation. Again, this is still not an active shooter.
Correct. The teacher who propped open the door runs inside to grab her phone so she can call 911 and report the crash. So she sees the crash as well, goes to get her phone to call and report it, comes back out while on her phone and realizes the suspect has a gun. She removes the rock that had propped open the door and closes it behind her. But again, the door, for some reason, did not lock. I don't know if there's, I don't know the nature of that door. So I don't know what would be necessary to make it lock. I don't know if it's supposed to happen automatically. I can't speak to that, but we do know that it does not secure. It could have been as simple as something was stuck and it didn't close all the way. Don't know. I don't know. So I can't say. 11:30 a.m. 911 receives a call saying there was a crash.
That's 3 minutes, correct? We're 3 minutes ahead now.
2 minutes, 2 and change.
Okay.
911 receives a call saying there was a crash and a man with a gun at the school, that the shooter was now at the school outside. 11:31, the suspect begins to shoot at the school from the school parking lot as police cars are arriving at the funeral home.
Again,
Okay.
Not unreasonable. You're going to the first shots fired call. And then we also have time. We have to take the time that dispatch is talking to the woman. And then she then has to stop talking to the woman and dispatch these guys at the same time. And if it's not a good dispatcher, which I'm going to go ahead and say Uvalde doesn't get a lot of practice at this, it's probably not easy for them to type and listen at the same time. A good dispatcher is something that's hard to find. And in big city dispatchers, Detroit, LA, Atlanta, those are trained professionals. They can talk to you, they can type, and they can dispatch all on different computers, all while being empathetic and understanding. You have put that in a little town like Johnston County where I live, that woman's going to go nuts because she's used to sitting there all day and not doing shit except playing Tetris on her telephone, dispatching a couple fires here and there.
Yeah.
Okay. So all these things, 1 minute, that's not unreasonable. Perfectly fine. I hear a lot of news outlets talking about how unreasonable this is. That is not unreasonable at all. That is just that is just communication.
Yeah. And if you've never been in that situation, you don't know what it's like until you're in it. Until you have been in a mass casualty critical incident unfolding like this. I mean, now you've got 3 shootings in the span of, 31 minutes, if you count the grandma, right? Trying to piece this together. Of course, they're starting to think, or I'm sure that the hairs in the back of their head are starting to be like, maybe this is all one thing, maybe, I don't know. And the teacher, I don't lay any blame on that teacher if they freaked out that there was a gun and tried to notify people, closed the door thinking it was closed and it just wasn't. And it just didn't secure for what, I don't know why, but I'm not blaming that person. I'm sure that they thought that they were doing their job. So then the school district police officer, again, Uvalde has a school district, consolidated school district police department. That's not uncommon around the country, where the school district has its own sworn agency to focus just on the schools. Other departments may assign out 1 or more officers as school resource officers. But the officer who was working that day wasn't on the campus at that time. Again, people are like, I can't believe that the school resource officer wasn't there. Yeah, but if they have multiple campuses, multiple schools across an entire district in a county that they're going to, they may be at one elementary school for an hour, drive another 20 minutes to the next elementary school. They may be over there. They may have an assembly at the high school that they're coordinating something for. There's all sorts of possibilities of why the school resource officer wasn't at that school at that time. So, and when stuff starts to stack up like this, it's easy to start thinking conspiracy theory, but I urge you to not. The officer drives to the school immediately after the 911 call is broadcast and approaches someone at the back of the school. He does exactly what he should do. He is told that the shooter is in the parking lot outside the school. He arrives. He sees a male in the parking lot. He addresses that male exactly as he should. This school resource officer, whoever he is, I haven't even seen a picture of him. I've heard people say he's fat and out of shape. Maybe that's the case. Whatever he is, whoever he is, he saw a man in the parking lot after responding to the call that a man in the parking lot was shooting at the school, and he went right to the threat, right to the man that he saw, who happened to be a teacher outside that apparently is unaware of what's going on.
Let's talk about that for a minute. You got a guy who's jacked up on adrenaline, going to an active shooter. This motherfucker, it's the last day of school. He's a school resource officer. He's sitting at the elementary school who's doing an outside, maybe they're doing an outside little award ceremony for the little elementary kids, and he's doing his round there, and they want him to be there because when the kids are outside, it's a little bit more dangerous. You know, let's have the school resource officer out there. Also, we're going to maybe give the school resource officer a little award. Thank you. Thank you for being the school resource officer at a little elementary school. All of a sudden, it's all fun and games. Now there's a shooting in a school down the road. He's like, shit, now I got to go. He drives really fast. Don't know if you've driven really fast for no reason, but even just driving fast can get that adrenaline pumping, baby. All right. But he's driving fast because there's somebody shooting at somebody. Yeah. So your adrenaline is going through the roof. You're not thinking about being a coward. You're not thinking about getting hit by a deer that's running out. You're thinking about, where's my gun? Where's my long gun? I am locked and loaded, I hope. How am I going to get this door off? How am I going to manipulate this thing? Where am I going? Am I going to the front of the school? Am I going to the back of the school? I'm looking at my computer. Oh, and I'm driving 100 miles an hour. I'm trying to do all of these things. I show up. I go to the back of the school. There's a dude back there. I've got my gun out. No doubt. Yo, homie, get on the ground. Let me see your hands. He's a school teacher. Hey, man, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. There's a car wreck over there. There's a car wreck. I understand there's a car wreck. Get on the ground. Show me your hands. No, I'm a teacher. I don't care who the fuck you are. Get on the ground, dude. Get on the ground. Now we have an argument. All of this is chaos. All this is chaos. He's not doing the wrong thing. He's doing what any single human being, trained or untrained, any Green Beret, any Navy SEAL. You think a Navy SEAL is just going to show up and parachute down on this school, go right to where the active shooter is because he's got some kind of... No, it doesn't work that way, man. This guy showed up, saw somebody in the parking lot, knows that there's a shooter in the parking lot, and he went and addressed it. Continue.
Correct. Apparently, the real shooter, when he saw the cop entering the area, hides behind a car. So the school resource officer, as he's scanning that lot, and I've been there, you just described it, right? You're combat breathing. You're trying to stay focused. You're trying to avoid tunnel vision. You're looking left and right. You're keeping yourself in the game. You think, okay, my heavy vest is in the trunk. I'm going to pop that. I'm going to get my heavy vest. I've already pre-popped and set my rifle in the passenger seat. I'm ready to go, right? Like I got to get my heavy vest. I'm getting my rifle and I'm going in, right?
And I'm killing it, dude. I'm going to fucking lay this guy down.
You're a cop. You've heard about all these school shootings. You're a school resource officer. You're like, this is the time. Okay. This is on me now. And he goes right to the person he saw. So anyone calling this dude a coward for not doing his job is simply ignoring reality. Did he not see the real shooter? Yeah, he hid. Is this not an insane situation happening right now? Gunshots wherever grandma lives, gunshots at a funeral home, gunshots at a school. They're starting to connect the dots. This is all happening in 3 minutes.
3 minutes, which the news says it doesn't take 7 minutes to respond to something. Well, I haven't seen where they haven't responded to something in over 7 minutes. Because if you're responding to somebody who's got shot in the face, you have to respond to that. You can't just be like, sorry, bitch. Sorry, there's a car wreck and another shooting. We're just going to forget about you and just go on to the next one. You got to keep it. You got to address one. I found out that I just got a message from overpaid producer. This department had 13 people on duty, which included admin, faculties, and patrol. There were 6 people on patrol that day. 6 people to handle a car wreck.
That's a pretty good shooting for a town of 16,000.
Right. You're handling, that means there's 2 people, probably 2 people going to mama shot in the face, two or 3 people going to the funeral home. And now you've got the last one, which is your schoolboy heading to the shooter. That's 6. Everybody got there and everybody got in at the time. So the fact that the media tells you it's unreasonable and that it took 7 minutes to respond to the school, frankly, that is not accurate. That is not accurate.
It's simply not accurate. So while the school resource officer is addressing the non-threat, but doing so correctly, the suspect begins to fire shots at the school from outside at the school and then makes his way toward the unlocked door. 11:33 a.m., the suspect enters the school and begins shooting into 2 adjoining classrooms 111 and 112. In the next 2 minutes, he will fire more than 100 rounds from his Daniel Defense AR-15. So for 2 minutes, he has unimpeded ability because of getting through that unlocked door, entering into these adjoining classrooms, and starts shooting. That's the reality of what happened. Okay? So there is literally, outside of that, him being able to access that door, if he was able to get inside any other way, if he was able to walk into Walmart or Target or a gas station or a bus stop, guys, I've got news for you. There is no universe in which, if someone is hell-bent on coming to destroy you, whether they're driving over you with a vehicle like Times Square or in the UK a couple years ago, if they are hell-bent on killing people with whatever instrument they have access to, you are not going to see it coming. They have the advantage of their plans and their forethought, and all of these officers are reactionary. Because it's not Minority Report, it's not CSI Miami, it's not freaking the movies. This is real life, where evil rears its head in terrible, terrible places and in unimaginably wicked ways. And he has 2 minutes unimpeded.
Some people are saying, well, why did he get 2 full minutes unimpeded? Why didn't this school resource officer do something in 2 minutes? Let me put you outside in a parking lot and let me fire off 100 rounds.
And you stop me.
Let me just keep doing that. And let me see you come get me. Let me see you make a difference in that scenario. What are you going to do? Shoot back with your pistol from the parking lot? I'm in a classroom. There's brick fucking walls.
Yeah, you're not.
There's nothing you do there. There's nothing that you can do to not just fix that problem. You going to throw a hand grenade? You're going to magically produce a hand grenade and throw that in a room full of children while they're getting clapped? You're gonna run in there with your pistol and hope for the best? You're not even going to make it across the parking lot. When you start hearing rounds clap like that close, right inside of the door, and all you have is a pistol, yeah, you want to do something. You're looking. You're trying to figure out how to do it. But 2 minutes goes by really quick when you're trying to come up with a fucking plan. And your plan is not, I'm just going to run right towards that sound of clapping. Because that's just that's it. Now you're just going to, you're now not going to solve any problems.
Sidebar, a lot of people have wondered there's conspiracy theories that are mind-blowing, like our government actually armed this guy to do this. If that's your mindset, I can't help you. I'm not even going to address that. Any low-life kid like this that works at Wendy's and saves up his money and gets birthday money from mom and grandma and whatever else can save up enough money to get a gun. So just leave the conspiracy theories aside about that, please. Yeah. He got a gun. He did it with money that he got from a job. And if you don't spend money on anything, you don't have bills, you don't have rent. The argument with his grandma that led to her getting shot in the face was over him not paying his cell phone bill. So he didn't spend any money. His friends at Wendy's, I say friends in air quotes, and people on social media knew he was planning on getting a gun and knew he was capable of doing this. Literally, somebody asked him on social media, what are you going to do? Shoot up a school? No one reported it ahead of time. No one that knew this crazy psycho kid that if you ever met him, you'd know he was off. No one reported that he was getting ready to try to get a gun. No one reported that he was angry and something was off. And it seemed like he might be the kind of person that was planning on shooting up a school. No one reported that ahead of time to the authorities. So you want to
because you don't want to judge somebody. You don't want to misjudge somebody. You don't want to call them out for their mental illness. Mental illness. What you want to do is cater to their mental illness and make sure that you're not offending them. Yeah. Let's not get them help for their mental illness. Let's just accept them. Let's accept his lonerism. His nihilism. Let's accept all of that.
Yes. People knew ahead of time. So you want to lay blame on God forbid we blame the shooter himself for everything that he did. God forbid we do that. But if you're going to blame somebody, maybe blame the dozens of people that all thought something's wrong. And in the week or 10 days leading up to this, we're all like, man, this seems to be getting intense. Maybe look at that. Enough said for that. 11:33, he has 2 minutes in two adjoining classrooms unimpeded to do his evil work. 11:35, 3 city officers enter the school through the same door and are later followed by 4 other officers, like quickly behind.
Wait a minute, so you're saying cops actually went in 1 minute after 100 rounds went off?
Within 2 minutes, 7 cops
didn't see that on the news,
and ran toward the gunfire. Again, these 19 cops were cowards. They stood outside and did nothing while these kids were slaughtered. Not true. Simply not true. Like, I don't know. I'm literally mind blown at the fact that this information is as available to you as it is to me. Now, yes, I did extra digging and talking to people to confirm it because I don't trust just what I see online. I don't trust it. From experience, it's anecdotal. So I do the digging. I do the due diligence. We owe that to you as our viewers, as our listeners. We owe it to you to do our best and to be transparent about how we get our information. But they lied. They simply lied. The narrative that people bit into, that sunk their teeth into, that cops stood outside and did nothing is a lie. 7 of them did exactly what they're supposed to do, which is when you have an active shooter,
which was all 7 of them. There wasn't any more. There were 7, and 7 went in at this time. 1 minute after 100 rounds have fired, 2 minutes after this whole thing started, which is, again, not unreasonable. So when I hear these influencers talk about when there's gunfire, you run right to it. No, you don't. You do, but you don't. You tactically move in that direction. I mean, we look, again, what if we did this with Black Hawk Down? Oh, I don't understand how they just left that guy dirted, how they just left him there to get captured. I mean, a Black Hawk goes down, you go to it. Yeah, you go to it, but when you've got an entire city shooting at you from every angle, it's not as simple. Oh, you're the biggest military in the world. You got all this stuff. Look at all these Ranger pictures. Let's post pictures on Facebook. All these Rangers and their training, and they couldn't get to this guy before he was captured. No, what if we did that to Black Hawk Down? You're doing the same. You're doing that.
Yes.
To this scenario, which yes, these guys were all trained, but they were doing everything that they possibly could at that time. You cannot run at somebody that's shooting 100 rounds at you across the parking lot with no cover. And maybe they did. You don't know that. But 2 minutes is not an unreasonable time to try to get an angle, to try to get a shot on somebody.
Yeah.
In that scenario.
Real quick, Joseph, I hear you. I hear you on our description about getting our point across by talking about people getting clapped. Listen, we're trying as carefully as we can to be as tactful as we can in this. We're cops, dude. We're doing our best. Okay. If you want to let the reality of what we're talking about, you be distracted by a choice of words about what we have already defined as evil and unimaginably egregious. If you didn't listen to us at the beginning of the show and now you want to criticize us now, I can't help you. So just listen or go do something better with your time. You'll be better served that way. So 2 of them take fire and receive wounds. Okay, grazing wounds. So 2 of them are hit in some way. That could be shrapnel, that could be ricochet. It could be the bullet could have hit them and just grazed them. They could be bleeding. They don't know the extent of their injuries. Sometimes it gets difficult to know that fact. But they enter in, they address the threat. Gunfire at 11:37 continues. There's 16 rounds being shot in total. It is unclear who is firing who, but what we know happened is that there is a gunfight between the responding officers and the bad guy. So the good guys weren't just standing here watching bad guy shoot people. They engaged him at first sight with gunfire. Okay? Once that happens, gunfire is over. Okay? Silence. Because, well, I'll keep going. 11:51 a.m., a police sergeant and other law enforcement begin to arrive. So now supporting agencies start coming in, okay? 12:03, a female, age unknown, calls 911 and whispers that she's in classroom 112. The call lasts a minute and 23 seconds. 12:03 p.m., more officers continue to enter the school with as many as 19 in the hallway near the room where Ramos is holed up. So gun battle ensues. Ramos is able to close the door that gets you to these adjoining classrooms. All right. Is everyone following? I hope. They immediately address the threat. Gunfire is exchanged. 2 of the 7 are wounded. The suspect barricades himself in these adjoining classrooms. Okay. The door that he barricades himself is the subject that is super, super important about this response that you have to understand. This is not a residential door. This is a commercial fire code, fireproof door. It is a steel core. It is a steel frame, and it is an outward-facing door. You mentioned earlier that we have fireproof carpet, fireproof walls, fireproof doors. This is exactly why, because you want them to be able to get out, right? And you don't want people to be able to push the door in. In the event of a school shooter and they shelter in place, outward-facing doors are fantastic because now the shooter can't get in. He can't just kick in the door. You can't
kick a steel door. You can't kick a steel door on a steel frame inwards. There was one apartment complex in Raleigh that had steel door on a steel frame with outward facing things. And we had a hostage situation, and Raleigh rechanged the entire way the SWAT team enters those types of doors because it took them a very long time to get that fucking door open.
Correct.
And again, you're not talking about, you don't have the accessibility that Green Berets, that SEALs, that Rangers, that 0311s, that infantrymen. You don't have that capability to open up a fucking door when it's 9 o'clock in the morning in the city of Raleigh. You don't just like go and get your breaching charge and do work. It's not, this isn't the military. And frankly, our country has made it very clear that they don't want our police officers to have access to this. In this case,
very good point.
They don't even have breaching rounds for a shotgun. I worked in the city of Raleigh and did search warrants at least once a week, if not once a shift. I didn't have any breaching rounds for my shotgun. You had to call SWAT to come in to bring that kind of equipment. You weren't allowed to carry it. It was against the policy. It was against our policy to carry more than 3 magazines of ammunition. Correct. And in this case, these guys are going to burn through some ammunition trying to put rounds down on a door. That, by the way, it's a steel door, and your pistol is not going to penetrate that steel door.
Yes. You have to understand, you could stack up 2 of the strongest dudes you possibly have at your department with a iron ram. You are not going through that door. That door will only open with the proper tools, which, quite honestly, a breaching round from a shotgun may not have even done the job. It may have taken explosives, right? Breaching explosives on the door to get it to work, in which case you also have to be careful. You don't know if there's other people inside. Again, there is approximately 41 minutes of no gunfire. Why? Because he barricaded himself in this room, and it turns out at the end he was hiding in a closet. People are like, well, why didn't they just shoot him through the sniper or shoot him through the window? Like, again, this isn't the movies. This is real life, people. This is how things work. You're not getting in that door that way. And these 7 cops already have 2 wounded, already had a gun battle with this guy, already doing their job of an active shooter. Now things switch. They don't know, did he off himself? Does he have hostages? Is he by himself now? Are there no more, they don't know yet. but they know that they're not getting in this door. Okay. Agencies show up. They simply didn't have the tools to breach this door. And it's not uncommon for normal patrol people responding to an active shooter to not have these tools.
So let's talk about this really quick. You got a department. You got 6 guys working. And I've seen the pictures of the SWAT team with Uvalde. Everybody's making fun of it. That's great. I don't know where those guys were or if they were able to respond. Most departments don't have a full-time SWAT team.
There was a volunteer SWAT team in the area.
Volunteer SWAT team. Okay.
8 members, 4 of them were on vacation. 4 of them weren't even there.
Perfect. So in this scenario, you do active shooter training, which we've all seen on social media. They just did active shooter scenarios that month or 2 months prior. Okay. Well, when you do those active shooter scenarios, you don't plan, which you should. And I guarantee you now,
and that
they will have a plan, but nobody planned for this small steel door on a steel frame that opens inward. Nobody said, you know what, because somebody could lock themselves in one of these rooms and massacre somebody, we're all going to go to explosive breach training, and we're all going to have wedges and hydraulic wedges in the car, and the fire department's always going to be ready to be able to saw this door off, and we're going to train people how to cover you while sawing a door, while taking rounds from a thing. And then we're all going to have shields, because we can't do all this work on a door without a ballistic shield to protect us from getting shot while we do it. I mean, this is something, this is like, you know, Lazaro Lopez is in the chat. Yeah. Let Lazaro Lopez get behind, let Lazaro Lopez get behind one of those little puffy balloon things with his fucking paintball gun. And then let's see you try to get him when you have no little bouncy things to hide behind, and you have to get a flag that's behind him, and he has unlimited ammo. And you have one of those little paintball guns. The fact of the matter, it doesn't matter how hard you try, how brave, how courageous. You know, a lot of people have referenced Tim Kennedy in the chat today. I don't know what Tim Kennedy said. I'm going to have to go back and look at it. There's a bunch of you doing that. But let Tim Kennedy, being as awesome, as badass as he is, let him try to fucking take Lazaro Lopez out with a paintball gun with nothing to hide behind, while Lazaro Lopez is behind one of his little blow-up things with his little 2-finger blaster and unlimited ammo. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how much training you have. If you don't have the resources to take out the bad guy, it's the same thing as the Black Hawk Down analogy. If you don't have the tools to get there, you just fucking can't do it.
The only way in that door would be explosive breaching, maybe a breaching round, some type of Halligan tool, or, you know, here's a common sense thing, a key, right? Let me tell you this. What I don't know is where some of this fits in the timeline. Okay. Officers tried to use a key. They had to find who had the key first. Then they tried the key to the door, but it did not work. Okay. A key was tried and it did not work. Now, did it not work because they had already tried kicking the door? They had damaged the door trying to get in, and now the lock was bent and it couldn't. I don't know, but I do know that a key was tried. So they tried to continue to advance their position, but they could not. They did not have the tools. They called for advanced equipment and teams to get there, because these cops standing ready who had already gone in, now the situation has shifted from active shooter to barricaded because there's no more gunfire happening. And he's behind this door that will require a saw, an explosive, or a combination of tools, with a team equipped with a heavy shield to take rifle rounds. And listen, these guys are all probably like, all right, if I'm stacking up, I'm getting shot. He's probably getting shot. We need 5 of us, because we got somebody that's going to open the door. Somebody's going to be on a shield. 3 of us are going to get shot. We need 2 more behind us that can take this guy out.
And guess what? I guarantee you one dude on that floor was thinking what I would have been thinking the whole time. This motherfucker's going through the roof. He's going to get out on that ceiling. He's going to get out through the things. And so now we're going to have to check up. We practice that as police officers. We go as far as doing these warrants where we're looking up at the ceiling because he could be in the attic and you're listening. So you got a guy barricading a room that you haven't heard anything. You think he's got to be trying to get out of that room. It happens to me on search warrants. Used to happen to me all the time, where they would get out through these adjoining townhomes. They would get up in the attic, run through, drop through an adjacent townhome, and leave out the front door, and then take off running. So now you got cops thinking this bitch could be in the ceiling with that gun, getting into another classroom. So many things. And I saw one of the comments in the chat. And I love addressing these, and I know my tone is probably hostile. I should probably calm it down a little bit, but you mentioned that they should have known and should have practiced that these were steel doors on a steel frame that open and facing. Sure, they should have known. They could have known, but also they have to know about autism and how to deal with kids with autism. So they have to dedicate time and money to learning about how to deal with an autistic
Racial
kid.
sensitivity training.
They have to learn how to not rape other employees by going to rape training. They have to go to ballistics training. They have to go to training on how to deal with juvenile sex crime victims. You know, that's not something that you just show up as a cop and you know how to deal with an 8-year-old who's just been diddled by her uncle. You have to go to a course to learn how to deal with that child so you don't say stupid things to ruin the case, not to ruin her as a human, but not to foul up the case so that it's lost in court because you asked her a question that you didn't have the authority to ask her. You have all of these other things that you have to know. Crisis intervention training, suicide training, systemic racism training. So when you're trying to fit in all of this vast water hose of knowledge, this fire hose of knowledge that's getting hit with you as a face as an officer, it's easy to miss something like, holy shit, guys, this is a steel door and a steel frame that opens that way. Let's go ahead and rewrite the training that we've already paid for because they hired somebody that is a school training expert, somebody like a Tim Kennedy or something like. They've hired somebody like that to write them an SOP. Okay. They didn't just say, hey, I've never been to an active shooter. I'm going to go ahead and write the SOP on active shooter training. No, they're going to go to these seminars put on by your Tim Kennedys, by your, all your big time guys, your gurus that know what the fuck they're doing. And they're going to write those SOPs for them. And so they're not going to say, oh, well, our school has metal doors on a metal frame and they don't have a master key to open them. Also, so now we have to repay this guy to rewrite this SOP. Nobody thinks about that. They just think it doesn't work like that. I wish it did, dude. I wish it did. And I promise you, whoever wrote that comment, I promise you that will never leave the minds of Uvalde ever again. Hey, man, I bet you every car after that has a fucking concrete stall in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to change the game, which is what I said at the beginning. I appreciate those of you who have approached this with some level of objectivity and open mind to hear a different perspective than what you might have heard up to this point. I appreciate that sincerely. And just like the Columbine incident shifted the way police responded to school shootings or active shooters, this is going to shift the common training or tools of responding, because until you encounter the situation, you don't even really know what kind of training you need to have to deal with something. And that is going to be a point. All of these initial responders didn't have the tools to get the job done. That doesn't make them cowards.
Let's not leave out the fact that these gentlemen and women are seeing horrific sights. You don't know what it's like to hear that sound of somebody being murdered. I've heard it. I've been on the other side of the door while listening to somebody have their shoulder blades being hacked by a cake knife. And that's one person and an adult. These guys are listening to children screaming. And I guarantee you they have children. I guarantee you every minute, every second that they're in that hallway, that they are panicking. They're not thinking about what the news media, they're not giving a fuck about your parents outside begging to know answers. They don't give a fuck about that. They're trying not to vomit. They're trying not to cry. And they're trying to desperately get that fucking door open or communicate to somebody that can get that fucking door open. And that's all they care about.
You can want that door to be open. Not cowards. You can want to be the one standing right in that door when it does open. If you don't have the tools to get in a steel core door with a steel frame and you just don't have the ability to get in, then you're on the other side, whether you want to be or whether you don't. But to label them cowards because that's how this situation unfolded is unfair.
To go on these podcasts and to talk shit, knowing that what you did in combat, you made mistakes in combat. And listen, I've been in combat, and I've served with some really awesome dudes in combat, and we've all done those AAR after, and we've all explained what we could have, should have done better. We've all had that falling out of the helicopter experience where one thing that we didn't account, that one thing we didn't rehearse, it happened. Lone survivor. I can name you a 1,000 different cases of things that happen that people did not account for. And we have after action reviews, but we don't have an entire social media group every time something terrible happens in the military that they are scrutinizing your every single move without knowing any of the details or having any of the facts. And the fact that these guys have gone out that know this, that have taken class after class after class on situations just like this, to go out and say these things, you hear the gunfire, you run to it. Yeah, you do. And that's what they did in Black Hawk Down, and they weren't able to get there in time. And bad shit happened. And these guys went to the sound of gunfire, and they didn't get there in time, and bad shit happened. Shit
went sideways.
But none of those guys, the guys in Black Hawk Down, they're not cowards. These guys aren't cowards. Bad shit happened. And you should have a little bit of empathy, because these motherfuckers have to live with it the rest of their lives. Oh, and by the way, they have to live with the fact that everybody in the country thinks they're a fucking coward. And all they signed up to do, all they wanted to do in that hallway was get through that fucking door. That's it. That's all they wanted to do. And now they're cowards. They are hated. Every politician, every influencer, every social media outlet has pegged them as the biggest living piece of shit, even shittier than the dude that fucking killed the kids. And how many of these guys you think off themselves? I bet you at least one or two of them do.
Yeah. And that is not, see, the problem in our culture, the way that they wanted us to divide is they want us to think that two things can't be true at once. It's got to be, it's just this cognitive dissonance, and it's this all in this one box or this box. And that's just not the reality. The reality is that they did everything that they could, and it was a terrible, terrible situation, right? That they want you to think that it's all one or all the other, when it can be multiple things at once. Now, here is a point. So don't forget too, that you've got an elementary school full of kids that have to be evacuated. You've got parents now. I'm going to continue with this timeline. Okay. At 12:06 p.m., Anne Marie Espinoza, spokeswoman for the Consolidated Independent School District, posts on the district's Facebook page, all campuses are under lockdown status. Please note at this time, all campuses are under lockdown status due to gunshots in the area. The students and staff are safe in the building. That was not true. They were not. The buildings are secure in a lockdown status. But did she know that? Did she not know that? I don't know. Your cooperation is needed at this time by visiting the campus. As soon as the lockdown, by not visiting the campus, as soon as the lockdown status is lifted, you will be notified. Well, instead of doing that, everyone shows up. You've got parents outside. You've got school buses outside. Now you've got agencies flooding the area. You got to understand, the closest big town to Uvalde is about 80 miles away, San Antonio. Okay. Uvalde has a lot of Border Patrol people there because it's not far from the border, and there's a lot of border issues that are crossing through that town. Now, you start getting BORTAC assembled, which is basically Border Patrol SWAT. They have a heavy presence in that area. So they're able to call out all these people. They're not working right now. They're getting these phone calls. They're getting called in. Hey, we've got a situation. We need you here. It takes time. Now, mind you, 41 minutes of no gunshots. These guys inside weren't sitting there while he was killing people. Not true. Silence from the gunman while they're trying to call and wait, hold the line, get the tools that they need to get in. They try to key. It's not working. They need to get tools to get into the door. So all these agencies are rushing. Now you've got people on the outside, parents who are wanting to get in. I get it, man. I get it. As a parent, I was there. I told you about that situation where I went in and it ended up being a suicide of a self-inflicted gunshot wound of a kid. But until we actually knew that he hadn't hurt somebody else in the building, right? Or that he wasn't part of another group who all planned on doing something and he chickened out and killed himself or whatever, we had to keep parents out. It was the most heartbreaking thing that I had to do, is to come outside and like forcibly hold parents freaking the heck out about getting inside to their kid to say, I need you out here. Why? Because we can't have a stampede of 1,200 parents.
Could you imagine that? Could you imagine if those kids were able to just, those parents were able to just go in there? Now you've got these dudes stacked on a door, fucking dead bodies everywhere. And now you've got all these fucking parents running around, where homeboy could maybe, if he was in the ceiling, he could start having free range of this parents, or he can just go ahead and blend in with them and get the fuck out. But again, that's what I'm thinking. When 40 minutes stop, I'm thinking two things. He's dead and great. Or two, he's trying to escape. And there's only one way out of that motherfucker, and that's in the ceiling. And then you don't have enough resources to say, get somebody on that roof. He might be headed for the roof. I don't know if this is a 2-story school or 1-story school, but we have a school in Raleigh where at night there were people on the roof breaking into the school. We got there and the kids had went into the gym and had locked themselves into the gym and made their way out to the roof and were jumping off the roof to get out of the gymnasium. So it can happen. Absolutely can happen. So you can't have parents running around willy-nilly. It's going to cause more problems.
And it's terrible. No, we're not celebrating like, hey, we're the cops. We're in charge here. These kids aren't your business. They're ours right now. That's not how it went down. You have to stop those parents almost at any cost from getting inside, because you can't let them get hurt. You have to hold that scene. That is what is in the best interest of everyone, including any survivors. Okay. So we'll leave that for a second, but I will bring up some points that create points of criticism, but they're not moral criticisms at all. One problem is that the chief of the consolidated school district, guess where he was? He was stacked up inside. That is a problem. Now, I commend him for wanting to be one of the parts of the solution. But the problem is, an incident command in an area of your responsibility requires you to be objective and step out of the situation and set up an incident command nearby and begin to deal with the active situation. Because what happened was all sorts of agencies and people begin to arrive. You've got multiple agencies inside. You've got multiple dispatchers taking phone calls. You've got parents arriving. You've got a message from school district going out on Facebook. You have a lot of different confusing. Again, I told you these mass casualty events, they are complex and they are chaotic. All of this is happening at once, and no one was a point leadership. They had not trained for this, and they did not have it in the moment. They did not have a incident command response set to this that may have made a difference. We can't what if ourselves to death. We're going to do that in the investigation, and it may change very much how policies and procedures are impacted on what we respond. But it is not a moral failure on the part of these cops. It is not a failure to act. It is not a failure to try. It is not a failure to identify with the heinousness of what's going on. It was a failure of preparation and equipment to handle this particular situation that 7 cops ran to right away, fired shots at this guy, and didn't win the gunfight, and he barricades himself. And now they're dealing with all of this stuff, trying to get ambulances in, trying to get the fire trucks in, trying to communicate across at least 8 agencies and chaotic parents. Does that paint a scene? Does that paint any kind of scene how crazy this is?
I don't. And
I will bring criticism there. It would be way better if that communication would have been thought through ahead of time. But that doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make them responsible for these deaths. Not even close. But what happens is 12:21. So again, the gunfire had stopped at 11:37, or shortly about that time, or right around that time. 12:10, a female, age unknown, calls 911 at 12:03. Calls 911 again at 12:10, says there are multiple people dead. She calls again at 12:13 and then again at 12:16 when she says there are 8 to 9 students still alive. So no one knows from 11:37 to 12:10 that there's anybody alive in there. It's been silent. They can't get in the door and they're waiting. Okay. While evacuations are taking place, while crowd control is taking place, while they're trying to figure out all this communication. At 12:10, the first group of U.S. Marshals from Del Rio arrive from 70 miles away to assist, and various other law enforcement officers are already on scene. 12:15, BORTAC arrives with rifle shields. Okay? Even the U.S. Marshals don't run around carrying rifle shields, guys, unless they're actually going out on attack mission. 12:19, another girl in room 111 calls 911 and ends the call when a fellow student tells her to hang up. 12:21, Ramos fires his gun again. So from 11:37 to 12:21, it's been silent as far as the gunfire. Ramos fires his gun, and officers believe he's at one of the door of one of the adjoining classrooms. So officers move down the hallway. They begin to advance toward the sound of the gunfire. Notice the situation is now shifting again. Active shooter, barricade. He's firing again. We're moving to active shooter. They move toward a different room where they think the gunfire sounds closer over here. Like, we'll go this way and position ourselves if he's coming out over here or what's going on. 12:21, 3 shots are heard during a 911 call. Around this time, police are stuck in the hallway because both classroom doors are locked and they're trying to get this key. 12:36, a child calls 911 for 21 seconds. A girl calls 911, is told to stay on the line and stay very quiet. The girl says he shot the door. So remember those 3 shots that ring out? There was a person on 911 who said he shot the door. So these guys are outside, still trying to gain entry while BORTAC sets up. And I'm going to pause here for a second. I don't know how fast it would have been in Raleigh. I was part of calling out SWAT multiple times. I heard an interview with a Tucson area SWAT guy who said even in Tucson area, it would have taken them about 30 minutes to assemble all the equipment they needed for breaching and entry to address a threat like that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I had a shooting on New Bern Avenue at a motorcycle gang club, and everybody ran inside, and it was a steel door. They pulled the garage door down, and maybe in 15 minutes, SWAT was already tearing that whole door down with a Bearcat because of the amount of people inside, and they were afraid of what was going on inside. And but being that this is in Uvalde, and you've got cops coming from 70 miles away that know nothing about this school. One, you do not just show up on scene, and you'll hear the influencers say you show up and you get to work. What are you going to work on? What side of the building is he on? We're just going to get off of the truck. We're going to grab our rifles. We're going to grab our shields.
Building.
And we're going to go into just whatever door the fuck we want to without the tools that we need. And now we're going to make 100 trips in and out. So we're just going to show up and run to gunfire. Now we're going to have the same situation as everybody else. Can't get in the fucking door. So now we need to know how many cops are there? Where are they at in this hallway? What are we looking at here? What's the problem? Well, they don't have a key. Why don't they have a key? Metal door, steel frame, outward facing. Fuck, dude. I need to get a breach together. Hey, where's Michael at? Oh, dude, he's still fucking 10 minutes out. He's got all the demo. He's still 10 minutes out. All right. Has anybody got anything else? Anybody got a Halligan? The Halligan's not going to work, man. They're taking rounds through the door, and the time it would take you to pry off that, you're going to get shot like 100 times. We got to have that demo or whatever it is. We need to have a saw. We need to have shields. How many shields you got? Well, I got one. All right, we got 2 shields. We got a saw? No, we don't have a saw. We got to wait for a saw. So it's like, you don't just show up like these influencers that know fucking better, man. They know better. You don't just show up and go. Like, I no offense to Tim Kennedy, and I don't know what he said. I can only go off of what you guys keep texting me in the chats. I'm not shitting on the dude. Trust me, I'm a huge TK fan. Big fan of the guy. But when they go on a mission as Green Berets, you have an op order. You have an ops plan. You have rehearsals. You have tons of equipment. You have contingency plans. You have emergency plans. You have all of this planning so that when you get there and that shit goes sideways, you're prepared and you're on the things. These guys don't have that. These guys don't have an emergency contingency plan. They don't have any of that stuff, man. They got pistols and a steel door. They're set up to lose. They didn't have an op order for this. Wish they did. Wish the fuck they did.
James Kelly says, okay, what about the stack outside what were they doing aside from moving to the sounds of shots? What problem steps were being taken? You know, I can't answer that question, which is why
I bet you they weren't playing solitary on their phones. I bet you they weren't sitting in that hallway.
You shouldn't assume that you know what they were doing or why. James, I appreciate the question. And I think that this speaks to the heart of why we're doing this live stream special is
love to know the answer.
That's exactly the point. The problem is where the gaps exist and we don't know. You don't hear me and Eric telling you exactly what they were doing because we weren't there and we don't know. We do know that they were attempting to get different ability to get in the door. And I am telling you,
I can tell you that it probably went
out. You could not, James Kelly, get in that door no matter how bad you wanted to without the right tools.
I bet it sounded something. I bet you it sounded something similar to this. Hey, we got to get in that door. Yeah, Mike, no shit. You got any fucking ideas how to get in the goddamn door? I don't know. Let's go find a closet. Okay, go, Mike, you go down there and go see if you can find a closet. Okay. Comes back. I've got a mop, I've got a broom, and I got a mop bucket. That's not going to work, Mike. Find something else. All right, I'm going to exit the school. I'm going to come back. I've got double up buck. All right, we can't shoot through this fucking door right now. There's kids on the other side of it. And by the way, that's not a breaching round. We're going to ricochet one of these bullets off into something else. And then what if it doesn't open? The guy starts shooting again. Yeah, you're right. Let's not do that. Well, fuck it. Let's do it anyway. All right. No. Let's not do that. Hold on. Let's call command and see what they say. Hey, command, do we shoot this door? Is anybody shooting anybody right now? No. Okay, well, I don't want to injure anybody else right this second. Let's hold off and wait until we get a proper way to breach this door without putting somebody else in harm's way. Got it, Chief. Okay, now we've got more gunfire and they're moving. Fuck, let's go. All right, dude, we got to get in this fucking door. All right, what do you do? Let's go up there and shoot it. Oh, he's shooting through the door. We don't have a ballistic shield. I can't go up there and put my shotgun on the doorknob and blow it off while he's shooting back at me, and I've got no body armor to do it. I guarantee you, bro, that is the kind of conversation that's going on in that hallway. Hey, what else you got? I found a shovel and a hoe in the back of my truck. It's not going to work, Mike. Can't get in the door with a shovel and a hoe. That's great for a car wreck scene. It's not going to be good for this.
I have it on good authority. I would say that I am over 90% positive from my investigation and conversations into this. I would say that I'm fairly confident. The majority of my sources, as it were, indicate that this door was finally opened with some breaching tools that involved pry tools and a Halligan and
I bet you it was the hydraulic thing where they wedge it and
people with ballistic shields ready to make entry when it did. And what happened is at 12:50 they finally get the door open. Now again, some sources are saying they opened it with a key. I don't believe that to be the case. We'll see later, but we do know that a team involving Bortak as primary, along with probably one or more people from the U.S. Marshal Service, made entry into that room and ended the threat immediately. They can be hearing evacuating children out of it on the 911 open line, and gunshots are heard, presumably those ending the life of the perpetrator. And at 12:58, it is confirmed on law enforcement radio chatter, according to Associated Press, that the suspect had been killed and the siege was over. Initially, DPS came out and contradicted much of this information. Again, DPS has walked back some of their statements. I'm not going to do that for you. You go do your own due diligence and notice how even in policing, politicians can run things and their walkbacks aren't as publicized as their initial statements, which were very irresponsible, since DPS and the Rangers are responsible for investigating major incidents like this. And you don't comment on ongoing investigations with information that you don't know to be true. It's irresponsible. And I'm ashamed of that leadership of the Texas DPS for doing that. even with the right tools, you got to know how to use them. And it's a multiple man job to breach a door like that. That's just a matter of fact about it.
You do that in Raleigh where you have the equipment and that shit gets done in minutes. You go out to Uvalde, Texas, where the equipment is 70 miles away. Well, why doesn't Uvalde have that equipment? Well, we could buy equipment for something that's never happened before. Or we have a big problem with fentanyl here. So we can either buy everybody Narcan and pay for that out of our budget.
And send them to training to how to use it.
And because we're more likely going to need Narcan than we are going to need the breaching tool for a steel door on a steel frame. So let's go ahead and buy the Narcan. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I promise you that budget is going to places like soccer fields. Budget is going to things like weight rooms for children, basketball courts,
battling. Here's something you guys do a little digging on your own about Uvalde. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, by the way. People say Uvalde. I don't know. Uvalde. It sounds Spanish to me. Whatever. Why is the Border Patrol so heavy around there? Well, it's not too far from the border, but there is major problems through there with illegal immigration. So maybe some of their budget is dealing with that, and they're allocating resources there. These are all things we can speculate on, and we should. And I think Eric and I, when we speculate, we're at least speculating from a position of experience, let alone just raw assumption. But these gaps, we've told you what we know, and we've tried to explain this to you from a police perspective. And the heartbeat of what I want to convey to you guys, and we're wrapping this up, is that these cops were unfairly labeled as useless, as lazy, as untrained, as cowardly, as all sorts of fill in the blank derogatory names within hours of this.
Even on our network, some shows on our network took 100% side of the media and said some bad things about cops. The people that I've been friends with in the Drinking Bros community, without asking, without messaging me, without trying to find any other piece of information, came out and said heinous things about police as a whole, about these police officers. And it shows me that the media has won. The media has beat you all. You all believe the media, and you can't walk that back. All of you believe it. You've seen the pictures that they showed you. You didn't question those pictures, but you questioned the police. And here's another thing I'll go off of, and I'll leave it on this. I'll shut the fuck up. But you've got people that do bad shit all day long. They're just not good people. And then they come back to the light, and they admit their sins. And then they are welcomed back into society, and they are applauded when they return back to the field, the court, the course. They're applauded when they come back, even though that they mess up. But then they come. Ray Lewis, who else is it? Tiger Woods, all these guys, right? But we love to give them a second chance. But you have the one guy who was flawless for a very long time and maybe misspeaks or speaks out of turn. And we want to hold that guy down for the rest of his life. And that's what you have here. You have cops that live their whole life for this one moment to try to do something. And they've been good people their whole time. And the minute they fuck up one little thing, you're ready to hold them down forever and to say things in order,
blame them for everything,
saying things on social media to elicit their suicide. When these are men who have been good things, but when Tiger Woods fucks up over and over and over again, you welcome back with open arms. And I don't understand that about our society. We love to hold a guy down like Tim Tebow for misspeaking one time, but he's literally put in an effort to be a good human being his whole life. But you'd love to find that one thing that he misspeaks on and hold him down. And that's the way police are right now. And I'm ashamed of all of you. I'm ashamed of the shit that you post on social media. That's fucking dumb. If it's funny, I'll give it to you there because I'm pretty irreverent. But a lot of you aren't posting shit that's funny or irreverent. You're posting things to take a stab at somebody and to kick them while they're down, and you don't even know why the fuck they're down.
You want clout, you want followers, you want a future position somewhere, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
You know, it's disgusting because you accuse the other side, quote unquote, of never wasting a good tragedy. And then that's exactly what you're doing, is you're not wasting the tragedy to further advance yourself, because the tide seemed to be pushing to jump on the cops, and you did it too. Whoever you are, you should be ashamed of yourself. I've said it publicly. And again, we have no problem if what emerges out of this is that one or more of somebody inside took a position of cowardice and other people, and that confused people, that led people in a bad direction. Cool. So be it. We'll call it like it is. If whatever emerges out of this as a point of, wow, yes, that my opinion is that the school district chief should never have been inside. Man, I love a guy that's in a position of leadership that still wants to get in the thick of it and is willing to put himself in harm's way. That much I can respect, but that's a bad decision. You are who people are going to look to. You are the school district police chief. This is your jurisdiction. This is your show. You've got to do it the right way, and you need an incident command. This is a mass event. You need to recognize it, and you need to get the communication lines clear. It appears to me that what will emerge out of this is two primary things. One is preparation in the proper type of communication response to an incident where you don't think it's going to happen, a small town, sleepy USA. And two is you need to have better tools where you don't think you might need them. Tools and training that matter, right? Tools and trainings that matter to incidents like this, but you don't know until you end up in the situation. That's how law enforcement continues to improve and advance. But you can't spit out of one side of your forked tongue that you don't want to militarize the police, and on the other side expect that they respond in 2 seconds like Navy SEALs, Johnny on the spot, like they had already been planning this mission for years. Stop it. It's ridiculous.
Martin Fair says that
you're embarrassing yourself intellectually.
We want to blame the chief because he wasn't white. I don't even know what color the fucking chief was. I don't even know if it's a boy or girl, and I didn't even know. And listen, that's the kind of chief I want to follow. I want to go to battle with a chief that's going to get in there and get on the floor. I'm fine with that. However, what Mike is saying here, Martin, is that the chief is there because he is the voice of the people. That's who they have put in place to be the face of this department. And in hindsight, which I hate to do, exactly. In hindsight, maybe he does look back and say, nah, fuck that, dude. I'd rather been right there in that hallway, because in that hallway, I was keeping these guys safe. I was keeping these guys calm. We were actively trying to come up with solutions, and I stand by these dudes 100%. Or maybe he says, fuck, man, I could have probably stopped that woman from being tased had I been out there. There was no leadership out there to tell these cops, hey, calm down, put the taser down. Ma'am, listen, I'm your chief. I know you. I play baseball. I coach your kids. All right. The shooter could be in the attic. He could be in the ceiling. We cannot let you in. We're getting people out. He could have been the voice, that he is the voice of authority. A street cop can't say those kinds of things because he's speaking out of turn. He can only be there and be quiet. He doesn't have the authority to tell you what is going on. That's not his job. He can get in trouble. He can get fired for that. But a chief can say that. A chief can speak with that kind of authority. And people will respect the chief because he's got all those fucking gold jingly things on his chest, Martin. If I walk up to you with a first class patch on here in Raleigh, nobody's going to listen to me. They'll be like, cool, first class. Get out of the way. Let me talk to a lieutenant. Even though I was way smarter than like fucking 70% of the lieutenants in Raleigh. Yeah. Most cops are.
Yeah. So,
but we're not shitting on the chief. We're just saying, if we want to play the blame game, if we want to kind of critique things, that's what we can kind of critique them. But to say that anybody was a coward, do you think the chief was a coward because he went in there and worked with his men? Fuck no, dude. No. Fuck no, man. And I don't know what I would do. Listen, that's why I'm not the chief. That's why I'll never be a chief, because when the shooting happens, when the shooting happens, I'm there. I'm on the scene. I can't be chief because I want to get my hands dirty.
Bad decision making does not equal cowardice. Mistakes in training or execution of your training doesn't make you a bad, evil person. Let's focus our attention back on where the evil deserves to be called out and dealt with. Let's talk about the source of these things, not through politicians, but through each other. We each need to take responsibility for thinking clearly for ourselves. This episode has been a plea for us to step back to some semblance of objectivity and human decency and common sense and compassion to understand we're on the same side here. Nobody wants kids to be hurt. And I don't think any of those cops did either. And I think you know that deep inside, and you
want the media deep down inside. You want the media to win. You want collapse. You want the drama. You want to be hateful at somebody. You want a reason to virtue signal, because that's what we do as a society. We virtue signal, and we love doing it. I side with Ukraine. I side with the Uvalde parents. I side with the fucking shooter of this mass shooting. I side with. We want a virtue signal so fucking bad that we want to be the subject matter expert. And I think that is why Mike and I were brought to do what we were brought on this network to do this, because Mike and I, from the very beginning, we didn't know each other, but I never wanted to be in this position. I never asked to be a podcaster. I never woke up and said, I want to fucking be a professional podcaster. I still don't care if this goes away tomorrow. Still own a distillery because beverage is my life, and that's what I love.
If this
so I'm not here for your fucking clicks.
Somebody asked
for your likes.
Do you really want to die on this hill? And the answer is absolutely. I will absolutely die on this hill, because this is what it's about. This is if I'm not as quote unquote Mike the cop, and we're not as failure to stop. If that's not what we're about, then what am I doing anyway? What am I doing? And that's why there's no ads on this. There's no promotion. We're
Matter
not
of fact,
this to
we were told to tread
else.
carefully. We were told to tread carefully because right now, sponsors already don't want to sponsor law enforcement related schools, related podcasts. It's insanity to me, man. That there's advertisers out there that you love, that there's products that we use that it said, because of this Uvalde thing, we're not so cool right now with doing a sponsorship, because now is not the time.
I've had people message me that are very influential on social media. Now, listen, I'm not anti-cop, but this thing was handled completely wrong. Like, it'd be like me calling you at your job. Now, listen, I'm not anti-accountant, but let me tell you how all these books are totally done wrong. And let me tell you about the IRS code, which I know absolutely next to nothing about. That's why we're here, to try to help give you a broader perspective than just following lockstep with what's out there on media, social media. And when we expect the comments where people say, hey, why would anybody listen to these two fat white dudes? That when you go after a personal attacks, it just shows that you don't know what you're talking about the actual issue, because you have nothing to say. So thanks for watching, whoever hates us. We appreciate it. I have to go. We'll see. This video is going to make us or break us, I guess.
I could care less
how it goes.
I could care less. I really do appreciate those of you who are willing to stand in here and take the time to listen to this, and I hope that we were reasonable in doing this, and I hope that it paints a broader picture of the event, and it paints a broader picture of what exactly we're here for. We're not here to tell your story. We're not here to tell the cop story. We're not here to tell mainstream media story. We're telling you to tell you the whole story, and then let you go ahead and make the decision on what you want to happen. And I'm not saying these cops are awesome, but I'm not saying they sucked either. But I'm giving
not saying
you
they're God's gift to policing or tactics, they're perfect. I don't know any of them. I'm not saying that they can't improve. I'm just saying it's not what they're telling you. That's it, man. Think about it.
So thank you guys.
All right, take care. We will see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow's going to be awesome
on the same channel, 11 a.m. And we'll talk about something that will be much more less stress inducing. All right, guys. Thanks.